Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Jumping into another week of linear relations. And this is actually our last week for the unit. So we'll have 3 new lessons, and then we'll have a review day Thursday, and then Friday will be your summative assessment, which is like a unit exam, but not really a unit exam. So that's what we'll do. So really 3 more lessons of new stuff, and then we are done the unit. So with that said, let's jump in. Alrighty, page 587, jumping into the lesson today. And this is where we're really putting all 3 forms of our equations together. So we have our 3 forms: general, slope intercept, and then slope point. And we're going to use them all, right? So at this point, the questions are not going to be as specific. It's just going to say, here's some information, find the equation of the line. And the nice thing is I have kind of 3 different things I could look at, or 3 different ways that I could, write that final answer. And it's just pulling all of the information that we have. So this is really a lesson where we put it all together. Okay. So yeah, general form, that's the ax plus by plus c equal to 0. That's the pretty one. Y equals mx plus b, that's my favorite. It's nice and simple. Tells me the slope, tells me the y-intercept. And then slope point form, also really, really useful. Tells me the slope, and then it even tells me a point if I know how to read the formula properly. But, a bit more complicated, a bit more pieces within it. Okay, so let's jump to a question, right? It says, given these points, determine the equation in general form of a line passing through 2 points. So this is a really common thing. It says to find it in general form. I cannot jump to general form. General form, I can rearrange an equation to look like that, but it doesn't tell me information. There's no way for me to plug into it. Okay, so I kind of disregard that and I say, all right, well, can I start by just finding the equation of the line in any form and then rearrange to general? Okay, and if I think, well, slope y-intercept form, I need the slope and I need the y-intercept. Or slope point, I need the slope and I need a point. Well, both of those, what it boils down to is I need to find the slope, okay, and then I need to find a point. And if I can find both of those things, I can write the equation of a line. If that point happens to be the y-intercept, well, great, right? And then I just use y equals mx plus b. If that point happens to be anything else, I would have to use slope point form, which is totally fine. So to find slope, I think, okay, well, it doesn't say, maybe it says it's perpendicular to this line or it's parallel to this line. It doesn't say anything like that. It just says, hey, it goes through these 2 points, a line passing through the 2 points. Well, this goes back to the start of the unit. If I have 2 points, I can find the slope using the slope formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I could go up and label. It's called P, that's x1, y1. That's my first point. And Q, that's x2, y2. Let's call that the second point. And I can calculate the slope. By the way, I put out a formula sheet that has this formula on it. So whenever you're doing assignments or homework or whatever, make sure you have that formula, right? You don't have to memorize that. You can definitely reference the formula sheet. Okay, let's plug it in and find our slope. -6, that's y2. Take away -1, that's y1. x2 is -2. Subtract x1, which is 3. So you get a slope of -6 minus -1 would be -5. -2 minus 3 would be also -5. And then you say, okay, well, reduce my fractions or write that in the best possible way. That's 1. -5 divided by -5 reduces to +1. All right, perfect. Well, there's my slope. Okay, done. Maybe I find my slope by looking at another equation. Maybe I find it just with 2 points. However I find it, I need to find my slope. Okay, and then I need a point. And it's easy because I actually have 2 points. I have 3, -1, or I have -2, -6. I'm just going to pick the first one. 3, -1. There's my point. It's my x1 and my y1. Fantastic. I am ready to roll. As soon as I have the slope and a point, I can go over and I can use slope point form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. That's going to give me an equation of the line. I can then convert it to general form, but I'm going to find the equation of the line first. Okay, so y take away -1 equals your slope of 1 times x take away x1, which is 3. Well, minus a negative, that's just plus, so y plus 1 equals 1, x minus 3. Fantastic. That is the equation of the line. So right here, maybe I put a star there and I say, hey, if this was just asking for the equation of the line, you did it. You answered the question, right? Now I need to put it in the specific form. Okay, so I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to convert to general form. Distributive property, I really don't have to do that. And you'll see why. 1 times x is just x. 1 times -3 is just -3. That coefficient of 1 doesn't change anything. It's just what it already is. Okay. All right, well, general form, that's okay. Everything has to be on one side. Then I have to get rid of the fractions, and then I have to make sure the x is positive. So looking at this, there are no fractions, so I'm not worried about getting rid of fractions. I have to get all the pieces on one side. So maybe I move these pieces over here, or maybe I move these pieces over here. But I think the third thing is x has to be positive. So since x is positive over here, if I were to move it, I would have to subtract an x, and then I'd have a negative, and that's an issue. So I'm going to leave these. I'm going to move the y plus 1. Okay? In order to get rid of positive y, I would subtract a y. What I do to one side, I do to the other. Positive 1 equals x minus y minus 3. And then finally, the opposite of that positive 1 would be to subtract 1. 0 equals x minus y minus 4. No fractions. The x is a positive coefficient, and everything's on one side. Awesome. Okay, so there you go. I can find the slope, maybe using the slope formula, maybe using something else. Make sure I have a point, and then I can plug into slope point form. And then once I'm there, I can rearrange to whatever form I want. Okay, I can do anything I want. And we go from there. So now that we have all these pieces, we have slope point, we have y equals mx plus b, we have general form, we have all of our slope formulas. The questions are very similar, and then it's just you picking, well, what tool do I need to use to get that slope, or to get that point, or to get that equation? All right. Number 2, determine the equation in general form of a line through the point 5, 0, and perpendicular to the line 3x minus 5y plus 15. 2 things. No matter what, I need the slope, and I need a point. Well, reading the equation, or the question, it says in general form, yeah, we'll get to general form later. It goes through the point 5, 0. Well, there it is. There's your point. That's actually the x-intercept, right? x1 is 5, y1 is 0. When the y value is 0, I have an x-intercept. Well, that's nice, but really that's just any other point. If I wanted to use slope-intercept form, I need the y-intercept. Okay, I need the x to be 0. So that's just any other point. I'm going to use slope point form. Okay, in terms of slope, okay, we have our point. Now let's talk about slope. It says it's perpendicular to the line with the equation 3x minus 5y plus 17 is equal to 0. Okay, so that tells me when it's talking about perpendicular, perpendicular I know refers to slope. So if I found the slope of this line, I could then talk about a perpendicular slope. All right, so 3x minus 5y plus 17 equals 0. If I wanted to talk about the slope of that line, I'm going to rearrange it to y equals mx plus b. I'm going to get the y all on its own. All right, let's do that. Move the 3x over. Minus 3x minus 3x. Negative 5y plus 17 equals negative 3x. Move the 17, subtract 17. What I do to one side, I do to the other. Negative 5y equals negative 3x minus 17. Good. Now I have that coefficient of negative 5. Divide both sides by that coefficient. Negative 3 divided by negative 5 would be positive 3/5 x. Negative 17 divided by negative 5, again positive 17/5. So what this told me is the equation I'm referencing has a slope of 3/5 and a y-intercept of 17/5. I don't care about that y-intercept. All I cared about is the slope. So the slope of this one is 3/5. But what I wanted was slope perpendicular. Okay? Slope perpendicular is the negative reciprocal. So mine started positive. The negative of that would be negative. Reciprocal means top to bottom, bottom to top, where you flip your fraction. Negative 5/3. Awesome. Well, I've got my slope. I've got my point. Time to turn this into our equation. Y minus your y value equals your slope times x minus the x value. I have a slope, I have a point, I can use slope point form. Y minus 0 equals negative 5/3 times x minus 5. Awesome. All right, well, that again is the equation of the line. So if it just asks for the equation of the line, good, I'm done. But it asks for general form. So I start rearranging. I'm going to do the distributive property. On the left side, y minus 0, that's just y. Okay, negative 5/3 x plus a negative times a negative, 25/3. Okay, 5/3 times 5, it's 25/3. And now I'm going to start getting everything equal to 0. So what I notice is there's two pieces on the right side. There's only the one piece on the left. Let's just get rid of that one. So let's just say minus y minus y. 0 equals negative 5/3 x minus your y plus 25/3. All right, I'm equal to 0. Okay, well now I need to get rid of the fractions. I have a divide by 3 and, well, another divide by 3. The opposite of divide by 3 is multiply by 3. And I know what I do to one side, I do to the other. So I have to do it to all of the pieces. I make everything 3 times bigger and everything 3 times bigger, and that's how I maintain the equality. I'm doing the exact same thing to all the pieces. Negative 3 times 0 is 0. And I cancel out the divide by 3, so negative 5x minus 3y plus 25. All right? I'm close. I almost have general form. The last little piece, the little extra info is you cannot have a negative in front of your x. Well, in order to get rid of a negative, I can multiply by a negative. I could multiply by negative 1. I'm allowed to multiply by anything as long as I do it to all of the pieces. Negative 1 times 0 is 0. And then what I'm doing is changing the sign. Positive 5x plus 3y minus 25. There you have it, general form, and I'm ready to rock. Okay, so this was my equation all the way up here. This is how they wanted me to present my answer, was general form, which is the pretty one, and sometimes the way we write our final answer. And this time, right, I found my slope. Instead of using the slope formula, I referenced another equation. All right, last question. Find the equation in general form of the line perpendicular to that line and with the same x-intercept as that one. This is a tough question, okay? I will definitely say this is a tough question. I need to find the slope and I need to find the point. I'm going to start with the slope. It says you're perpendicular So 5x minus 7y minus 10 is equal to 0. This is the same thing we did on the last page. I don't get to use the slope formula. I have to find the slope of this line. And then if I were parallel to it, I would take that same slope. Here I'm perpendicular, so I'm going to find a perpendicular slope. So I have to do some rearranging. Minus 5x minus 5x. Negative 7y minus 10 equals negative 5x. Add 10 to both sides, get rid of that constant. Negative 7y equals negative 5x plus 10. And divide away that coefficient. Divide by negative 7. Okay, so almost the exact same thing we just did. Y equals negative divided by negative, positive 5/7 x minus 10/7. Okay, so my slope of that thing is 5/7, but I don't want that slope. I want a perpendicular slope, the negative reciprocal. So my slope is negative 7/5. All right, fantastic. Now I need to find a point. And this is where we have to be really careful. It says it has the same x-intercept as x minus 2y minus 12 is equal to 0. Okay, well, if it was y-intercept, I could rearrange to y equals mx plus b and take the b value. It's tricky. It's the x-intercept. So what I'm going to do is, I remember from last unit, the x-intercept happens when y is equal to 0. So in this thing, I can plug in y is equal to 0 and solve for x. X minus 2 times 0 minus 12 equals 0. Okay, 2 times 0 is 0. So x minus 0 minus 12, or x minus 12 equals 0, and it's a one-step solve. Add 12 to both sides. X equals 12. Okay, which means your point is x comma y, 12 comma 0. That's my x1 and y1. Awesome. All right, so the slope, yeah, that was pretty similar. The point, they really made us work for the point on this one. They didn't give it to us right off the bat. We definitely had to do a little bit of work for it. All right. Now that I have the slope and a point, I go to slope point form. And then it's the same as always. Y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. So y minus 0, that's nice, equals negative 7/5 x minus 12. Okay, there's my equation of the line. And now I rearrange to general form. So why don't you pause the video ahead of me and then try to convert it to general form, and then I'll jump back with the answer.
346 minutes later.
All right, there you have it. My answer all the way at the bottom, 0 equals 7x plus 5y minus 84, and almost the same as what we did on the last page. Okay, did the distributive property, negative 7/5 x plus, a negative times a negative is positive, 84/5. And maybe use your calculator for that. Okay, move everything to one side. I move the y because then I only have to move the one piece. 0 equals negative 7/5 x minus the y plus 84/5. Then I say, well, I got to get rid of that fraction. The opposite of divide by 5 would be multiply by 5. That gets rid of the divide by 5s. Negative 7x minus 5y plus 84. And then the last thing is, okay, get rid of that negative, right? And I can do that by multiplying by negative 1. Get my final answer. If you're looking to maybe save yourself a little work, instead of multiplying by 5 and then multiplying by negative 1, I could just multiply by negative 5. And it would have the same result. So maybe you think about that in advance, but you don't have to. Okay, you absolutely don't have to. And that's it. My 3 equations, putting them all together and finding the equation of the line. Got some homework questions where really it's, okay, what information is going to allow me to find my slope? What information is going to allow me to have a point? And then plugging that in to a formula. And that's it. So 180, 3D, 4B, 5A, and 6 is your homework. There you have it. That's the lesson for today. little bit shorter of a video, which is nice. And then I'll leave you guys with some homework and a check for understanding. And we're ready to roll. So now we've put together all three forms of the equation. And yeah, we're close to the end of the unit. Only really 2 more lessons left. So smash the like button, hit subscribe, tune in again, and we'll wrap up this unit by the end of the week.